Hey, what's going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew Review. This is a somewhat new series I'm doing here on the channel in which I take pieces of homebrew for game consoles and, well, I review them to the best of my abilities on here. So, in case you do not know, Homebrew is typically unsigned code which works on a modified video game system, and this could be anything from applications, plugins, utilities, emulators, game ports, and completely, brand new Homebrew games built from the ground up. So I've done a few videos in this series. I've done one over the PPSSPP emulator for Switch. I've also done one over a game port already, which was Grand Theft Auto 3 ported over to Switch, and we're going to be doing another game port right here in the form of Doki Doki Literature Club from the DDLC-LOVE project, and this is by, I believe, LukeZGD. I had to make sure I got that right. Now, as stated on the DDLC-LOVE GitHub repository, DDLC-LOVE is a Doki Doki Literature Club port for the Nintendo Switch, 3DS, Sony PS Vita, PSP, and PS3, programmed in Lua, running under Love Potion for Switch and 3DS, One Lua for PS Vita and PSP, and Lua Player for PS3. Now, I will say here that this is not going to be a review of the game. Yes, I am discussing a game port, but this is not going to be a review of the game itself. This is going to be a review of the DDLC-LOVE project for the Switch specifically. I'm talking about that because I'm going to kind of glaze over the other ports, I'm sure, but because I mostly played this, or pretty much did all my playthrough on the Switch right here, I'm going to be discussing that specific build. Now, there might be some details I talk about with the game, but I'm going to do my best to keep it absolutely minimal, because trust me, this is a game that you want to go into blind. So if you even want to minimize the video so you're not looking at any of the footage, I would completely understand and maybe even recommend that as well too. But if you're going to continue watching the video content of this itself, I am going to make sure I will only be using footage from the very early minutes of the game, so we're really going to avoid any kind of, big spoilers of the game itself, because again, this is something you want to go into completely blind. I am going to ask as well too, if you love this game, if you're infatuated with it, if you are, even if you just like it a little bit but you're familiar with it, please do your best to keep spoilers out of the comments section. I say this because the fans of Doki Doki Literature Club that I have noticed do a fantastic job of not spoiling it because they want people to experience it for themselves, so I'm kind of trying to cultivate and do the same thing within my comment section. All right, just, talk about the port, don't talk about the game. That's what I'm asking. Now, again, actually going back to the port itself, I am going to be mostly discussing here the Switch version, because this version I have played through multiple times at this point, and I have used the latest version at the time of recording this, which is 1.1.9. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about setup on this, because thankfully, setup is pretty easy to do if you have a modified Switch. Getting DDLC-LOVE set up on a Switch is pretty simple to do. Of course, this is going to require that you do have a modified Switch running Atmosphere custom firmware. I'm not going to go into the details of how to get custom firmware set up on there or any of the nitty-gritty on that, but once you get to that point, you just need to navigate to the DDLC-LOVE GitHub repository, and we're going to need to click on the releases page. Over at releases for 1.1.9, which is what this review was using, there is a DDLC-LOVE.NRO file as well as a DDLC-LOVE LP 1.1.0.NRO file. If you want to look up further details between these two, you certainly can, but I just end up getting the regular NRO file. Just download and save this somewhere. If there's any further detail you're needing to know on this, including usage for any of the other systems that this works on, the GitHub repository, just the front page here, works out really well and has quite a bit of detail, including things such as, getting certain things set up and the location of save files, which I am going to make a small adjustment on the Switch side of it all. Either way, once you have your NRO file downloaded, pretend this is going to be our micro SD card. You grab the DDLC-LOVE.NRO file, you put it into the Switch folder within the root of your SD card, and I mean, that's That's literally the entire setup right there. It's really that simple. It's all within a NRO file that lives within the switch folder on the root of your SD card. For what it's worth as well too, the save location is technically incorrect on Switch. I noticed it did change on the latest version. So when you are saving, it's going to create within your Switch folder another folder called save. You do not need to create this. This is just how it's going to look. And inside of your save folder, this is where all of your DDLC-LOVE saves are going to reside. So that's really about it. You just take that NRO file, you copy it to your Switch folder, and then you launch it from the Homebrew menu. And be sure to use title redirection so you're utilizing the full system resources of your Switch as opposed to launching within applet mode. So let's talk about the experience itself now that you have this set up. Well, first of all, this is a visual novel. Now, I am not a newcomer to visual novels, I would say, but I've only discovered them and really been playing them for about the past 2 years or so. I'd say that sounds about right. And at the same time, though, I'm not a veteran because I've only read, probably less than 10 of them, and I've been playing them for about 2 years or so. But what you're seeing on screen, I mean, this is pretty much what you see is what you get. As for settings, thankfully, I really didn't have to tweak any of the settings here. I mean, there is stuff such as text speed and such that you would find on any good visual novel, and it's important to have those settings, but I really didn't have to tweak anything at this point. And stating this yet again, if you want to try your own build of it, like for 3DS or Vita or PSP or what have you, you most certainly can. I did try out the 3DS version briefly. I wasn't too crazy about how that one looked, to be honest. That was just my opinion, though. And the PSP version, I actually could not get up and running successfully. I kept getting Lua script errors. But for the Switch version, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how it looked, how the presentation handled itself, how, I mean, just everything with it. I was actually really impressed with this Switch build. And that kind of leads me into the good stuff. It looks great, it plays well, and even more importantly, I didn't experience any crashes of this, which certainly surprised me. So I would say that on Switch it was pretty stable, pretty sound. It also seems to be the complete game right there. It's all packed within that NRO file, and it all sounds great for the most part. The cool thing is you don't have to, build this out yourself like I had to do with the Grand Theft Auto 3 port, which even that was easy enough, that's fine. But this is literally just grab the NRO file, it's all pre-compiled, ready to go, you drop it in, you run it, you're done. You're all good to go. The game is there. It can't get much more simple than that. Now let's talk about some of the bad stuff on here. And more specifically, the only thing I really want to complain about here is the sound. It isn't specifically the sound or the sound quality that is bad. The problem is the music on this kept cutting out. Now I know this is an issue with the port itself, as this can be alleviated by if you're, reading this and all of a sudden the music just completely cuts out. You can save your game, exit, load up that save game, and almost every time the sound will come back in and the music will start playing yet again. Now, for my setup here, I was using Atmosphere custom firmware. I was launching it properly. I've tried redoing my custom firmware setup. I switched over to FAT32 file system from exFAT, and I talked about that in my previous episode because Grand Theft Auto 3 was giving me issues. So I figured if Grand Theft Auto 3 was giving me issues with exFAT, maybe that might be resolved with DDLC-LOVE. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to make a difference. I even updated my build because it did get updated while I was playing this from 1.1.8-4 to 1.1.9. and I still got the same results. Now, unfortunately, the downside of this is I really don't think this bug is going to get fixed because this GitHub repository has actually been archived, meaning it's read-only, meaning that the author of this is not going to be making any further changes on this. However, because this is open source, if people want to go in, fork it, try and resolve it themselves, and then, host their own fork with the fix on there, they're more than welcome to do so, and that is the beauty with free and open sourced software. However, if you're expecting a direct update on DDLC-LOVE here from the original author, don't bank on it. It's already been set to read only. It's archived. It doesn't look like there's going to be any further things that are going to be added to this build. It's certainly not game breaking, but it is a bit of a shame. Sound and music in a visual novel, in my opinion, are extremely important, and the workaround fix I have really takes you out of the element of the game you're immersed in. To me, reading a visual novel is like reading a book, and just imagine you're like reading a book, you're about 5 minutes in, and then, you know, someone interrupts you, so you have to save your place in the book, you have to put the book down for like a minute, and then you pick it back up again, and just imagine doing that anywhere from like every 2 to 5 minutes. It just breaks your immersion on there, is what I mean. However, one thing I have noticed, it's not 100% consistent, but a lot of the times, if you just want to, you know, trudge through it, stick to it, you don't want to keep exiting out of the game and going back in, if you just continue to play without the workaround, most of the time, the music will kick back in. Most of the time, it will. But I can assure you it's not a part of the game itself, it seems to be an actual glitch or bug with this here. So what about my final thoughts on this? Overall, this is an incredibly sound build of this game, you know, minus the sound issues. No pun intended. I've actually missed out on playing this game for a while now, as I personally don't like reading visual novels on a TV or monitor. I prefer to have them in a handheld platform, much like I'm reading an actual book or I'm reading an ebook on an e-reader. And the cool thing is, this finally allows me to accomplish that easy enough, and due to the platforms this was ported on, I can tell handheld gameplay was definitely LukeZGD's priority, because every single console that this has been ported to is a handheld system in some way, except for the PS3. The PS3 is the only, like, console, like, hard console that this has been ported over to. So if you have a modified console and you have any interest in playing through this or reading through a visual novel, I would personally have no issue recommending DDLC-LOVE. And last but not least, some people might be asking, well, wait a minute, the entire game is being redistributed for free. What the hell is going on with that? Like, don't you have to pay for it or something? Is this going to be an issue? I don't believe so. Because in regards to purchasing a copy of Doki Doki Literature Club, there's actually no need to. Not only do these pre-compiled versions contain the full game, of course, like that's what we've talked about here, but unlike RE3NX, the game is originally released and distributed for free. You can get it right from the developer, you can donate to them if you'd like to, but you can even get it on Steam completely for free. You don't have to pay a cent to get this game on its original intended platforms, which was Linux, Mac, and Windows. Although the game is completely free on PC platforms, the author of this port, LukeZGD, does recommend supporting the official release of Doki Doki Literature Club with a donation to Team Salvato if you do care about the game and have enjoyed it quite a bit. So that's about all I have to say in regards to DDLC-LOVE, this specific port of it. Hopefully you all enjoyed this additional episode of Homebrew Review, and that's what I'd like to ask you all. If there's any other utilities, applications, emulators, what have you, that you'd like me to detail further on this, what would you like detailed there? If there's anything else or anything that can be done further on here. Like maybe even with Doki Doki Literature Club, would people be interested in me revisiting this and going through the other ports as well? I mean, maybe. Just let me know, and, you know, maybe we can entertain something on here. Because this is going to be a pretty open-ended series. I have a bunch of systems, I have a whole lot of homebrew that I can definitely review. Whether it be as long as this episode or shorter, that might be fine. And by the way, I anticipate other episodes would probably be shorter than this, because even though I'm not reviewing a game, I'm still reviewing a specific build of a game itself. So game reviews just tend to be a little bit long, at least in my opinion they tend to be. It is worth noting as well too, if you gave some pretty good recommendations that I might have said were good from the RE3NX review and I didn't implement them here, it's because I'm recording this right after the RE3NX review was recorded, so it's now going to be taken into account for future episodes, of course. Anyways, wrapping this up here, that's about all I have to say in regards to DDLC-LOVE. Hopefully this was interesting to you, hopefully you all enjoyed this review, and let me know what your thoughts were on this. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.